Many of you guys are commenting that you're considering making the switch to a Ford, whether it be an Expedition, an F-150, or Super Duty. And in all cases, they're powered by, or they have, a Ford 10-speed transmission. There's a lot of different opinions and rumors going on about that transmission. I wanted to share my experience with my two daily drivers that we use as a family, our 2023 Expedition Max Tow, and my F350 7.3 gas. Both of them have a 10-speed, a 10R80 here, and, well, per some of the literature, it says that they're 10R140s. That's a bit of conjecture, and we'll get into that. That's going to be a strong opinion. That's going to get some uproar down in the comment section, but I'm just going to tell you guys the truth. But in this video, we're going to discuss my ownership experience with both of these two vehicles and what I think of the 10-speed as an owner of two of them. So, this is a 3.5 Ecoboost, very strong engine. This is a 7.3 gas, also a very strong engine. The F-150 also has the 5-liter Coyote and the 2.7 Ecoboost. Both of them are very strong engines, and also the Super Duties also come with the 6.7 Power Stroke and the HO version. All of these engines are extremely strong engines in their classes, and for that reason, the 10-speed performs extremely well. What is in front of the 10-speed are class-leading engines in class-leading vehicles, and therefore, honestly, the ownership experience, if I'm going to be entirely frank with you guys, I am extremely pleased as a 10-speed owner with my two vehicles. This one has 42,000 miles. It's 2023. Also, 2023, I bought this one first. I bought this in like July. I got this in September. My truck has almost 24,000 miles. I love the 10-speed. Now, I don't love it probably for the same reason that I love like my 4R100. My 4R100 in my Excursion has been through limitless abuse, and it has got through mostly unscathed, and it's always done the job. And it has the 2VV10 in front of it, and it's not as good of an engine as the 7.3 in terms of horsepower and torque, but it is, however, stood the test of time. The 4R100 stood the test of time for me, and it's a transmission that I still regard extremely highly. These are new vehicles. They're expected to be reliable. When you buy a vehicle, you expect them to be reliable. So let's talk about reliability. I believe it was 2017 or 18 when the Expedition got its facelift, 2015 for the Mustang and the F-150, if I'm not mistaken, and the Super Duties in 2020. All engines in the Super Duty, besides the 6.2, got the 10-speed. So the only way to buy a four-wheel drive Super Duty with a 10-speed, well, a four-wheel drive 10 or a four-wheel drive 7.3. Your only option to get a 6-speed with a 7.3 is to buy a chassis cab, an E450 chassis cab. I think maybe E350 too, but whatever it is, a two-wheel drive chassis cab dually. Not what you guys are probably here trying to buy. So to buy a 7.3 or the 6.8 gas or a 2020 and up 6.7, you are buying a 10-speed. That is your only option. You don't get a choice. Not that you don't really get a choice. You don't get a choice. So you better like it, I guess, is kind of the point. We don't have another option. I think if we had the luxury of having a 6R100 or 6R140 like was backing the 6.2 and the 6.7 in 2019 back in an even Steven truck, we'd have a little bit more of an opportunity to have an even Steven comparison. The 6R in my previous truck, I had a 2019 6.7, and it did everything I ever wanted from it. They are extremely reliable and strong transmissions in that application. What happened in 2020 was the engine got a pretty sizable horsepower boost from 450 to 475. We still have the 475 horsepower model 6.7 Power Strokes in currently, or you can get the HO with 500 horsepower and 1,200 foot-pounds of torque. Both are very strong, with the standard output 6.7 not being a class-leading torque engine, but a class-leading horsepower engine. Even though it's the standard output, it's still it's still above the Duramax and above the HO Cummins. The HO Cummins having more torque than the standard output, but then the HO having more torque than the HO Cummins. So these are class-leading engines and class-leading transmissions in class-leading vehicles, but they're our only option. I would assert that in the first couple years of the Super Duty, of the Expedition, of the F-150, the Mustang too. They all had their fair share of 10-speed valve body and internal failures. There are several different failure modes. You can look those up directly from the techs who are working on them, who can tell you exactly what is going on with them. And they will tell you that those first couple of years of each one of the models, and it's kind of amazing to me in 2015 when they first learned about 10-speed issues that they didn't just resolve them in the first place. The 2020s went through similar growing pains as the 2015 F-150s did, which is a little weird. The early Expeditions went through similar growing pains to the other vehicles. And when I'm talking about this, they had failures, low mile failures, before 24 and 42,000 miles. There were some low mile failures. I am not having any trouble with either of these transmissions. Occasionally when the transmission is cold, and my truck does it more than the Expedition, the 3rd to 4th gear shift is held a little bit. By that I mean you can kind of feel the power fall off and a delay in the shift, and then it shifts. And it's not clunky, it's not hard, it's relatively smooth. One thing too, when you're driving and owning a Super Duty, the parts, and I've talked about this before on my channel, the parts within a Super Duty, the splines are huge, the U-joints are huge, the slip yokes are, well, that's splines again. There's also internal splining between the transmission and the transfer case, the torque converter to the pump, the torque converter to the input shaft. There are lots of interfaces between very big parts that all have clearance. There's more clunkage going on in a Super Duty versus an F-150 or an Expedition. If you're coming from an F-150 or an Expedition, you drive a Super Duty, you're going to notice more in and out of reverse and drive and park clunkage going on in the Super Duty. That is normal. That's entirely part of having an HD truck. That's not something to ever worry about. You're going to feel uneasy with that, and I understand, but I want to tell you that when you're doing the shopping here, if you're going at this for a Super Duty, know that they make more noise going in and out of gear. It's just the way that they are. So don't worry about that. I have a very strong regard for this transmission in terms of towing performance. This is rated at 9,000 pounds. This is rated at 18,000 pounds. I tow 17 with this. I've had my 14K dump trailer behind the Expedition, but not running it at 14K. I've had all of the 9,000 towing capacity behind the Expedition, and it does a very solid job. And that is partly because the 10-speed, as I've already stated, is fronted with phenomenal engines. Both of these, the 3.5 Ecoboost, I really like it. It's a good driving, towing, work engine in a truck. I actually really like that engine. In the same way, the 7.3 is an overachieving gas engine. I really like it. When you drive a 6.7 Power Stroke, you are going to be floored at how fast it is, and how smooth it is, and how easy it is to drive something that is as powerful as a 6.7 Power Stroke is. And a lot of that comes down to how well these transmissions work. Are they better than the 6-speed? Well, can't buy a new 6-speed anymore. I would lay my money on the average new produced 10-speed to run more miles and more years than buying a used 2019 and back Super Duty, a used older 6-speed F-150 or Expedition. And that's kind of like, no duh, those vehicles are older. But you don't have a choice of buying. You're not able to select a 2020, or excuse me, you're not able to select a 2025 Super Duty with a 6R140 and a 6.7. It's not a relevant comparison. Oh, we got some geese flying through. It's not really a comparison that you can make. So your only other option is to buy an older truck. I'm going to put my money on the reliability. A lot of people, reason why people go out and buy a new truck is they just want to buy something that they can turn the key and go, and they're not having to do regular maintenance. They're not having to do more than regular maintenance on their vehicle. And that is something that both of these vehicles have been great for me. I've had to do zero to them in terms of myself, my own personal work. We've talked about, I had some trouble with both front and rear axle on my truck. It was a manufacturing issue. It has since been corrected by Ford. They had a very poor manufacturing process in terms of cleaning up after themselves after they machined the axles. That has supposedly since been fixed. They've replaced my axles on full warranty, no money out of pocket. And my understanding in talking to the engineers that physically came and inspected my truck, that my truck and the inspection of my truck and the whole process that we went through with getting my truck fixed positively influenced the process that is used from then on to replace the M235 and the Sterling 11.6 when they have failures. So you guys who have had subsequent failures I was told by the engineers that because of the time they spent putting my truck back together manually, finding out that manually fixing it didn't work, and then putting brand new axles on, I had a positive result. So other than that, the Expedition has never been in for anything else than regular service. I have changed front and rear axle oils, transfer case oil, and the engine oil has been changed many times. I changed 5,000 miles, every single engine oil change, and we're coming up due on we're not due for a transmission oil service, but I think I'm going to have them do it early because I believe in that. It's kind of part of something about keeping, your vehicle in good nick, if you want. Transmission oil, if you maintain it regularly, change the filter, in my opinion, is going to extend the useful life of the transmission. I don't know that I would say that the 6R140 or the 6R100 is a worse transmission than the 10-speed. But the 10-speeds are so good and they perform so well, and they are the only option, that I certainly would not advocate you guys go ahead and buy an older truck to avoid the 10-speed. Does that make any sense? I hope that makes sense, because that's kind of the end conclusion that I want to offer to you guys. I like the way that they drive. I like the way that they work. Having the more speeds, I'm going to tell you why they have more speeds. It's not because it's faster, and it's not because it's it could definitely would impact fuel economy. It's for emissions. The only reason why we have the 8-speed and the 10-speed in terms of the ZF8, which is used in a myriad of vehicles. Bentleys, I think Beamers use it too, but tons of American cars, Dodge and many of their vehicles, the Jeep, all that stuff, they're all using ZF8s. Wonderful transmission. The reason why that exists is because it passes the EPA drive cycle, or it allows an engine with a high performance threshold to meet the emissions drive cycle by always having a gear that keeps the engine at an optimum RPM range for the best emissions performance, which allows the vehicle to go on sale in the first place. If you cannot pass the EPA drive cycle, you cannot sell that vehicle with that calibration. So if you couldn't have a 10-speed, you would have to have a lower power rating. The power ratings that we have are thanks to the vehicles that are able to pass the EPA drive cycle test with the transmission, which is the Ford 10-speed. So if anything, you can thank the Ford 10-speed for allowing us to maintain the ability to buy amazing vehicles like these. If my memory is serving me, just because it's been a while since I bought it and I don't really go around and brag about horsepower levels, I think this is 380 horsepower in 400, I think it's 75 foot-pounds of torque. I think that's what it is. 430 horse, 485 foot-pounds on the 23 and up. 7.3. Very, very strong horsepower and torque, very strong resulting performance, and really that comes down to thanking these transmissions for their help.
Well, thank you guys for watching the video. I wanted to get back to talking about the naming convention, which has been a little bit controversial on the Ford 10-speed. Ford historically used the last digits, whether they be 65, 70, 80, 100, 110, 140, to dictate the input torque rating of the transmission. Those different transmissions over the years had different cases and different architectures as they went through all those different sizes. The 100 and the 140 tended to use the same case with a different number of, or a similar casting, with a different number of friction steels and planetary gears in each one of the planetary sets. So that input torque rating is derived by the strength of the transmission. Some of that is the case design. Some of that is the shaft size, diameters, torque converter size, pump size, inner workings of the transmission. What you need to know is that the one used in the 7.3 and the 6.7 are not the same transmissions internally. They have a different number of frictions and steels in the clutch packs and a different number of planetaries in each of the gear sets. They are not interchangeable. If you were to call a junkyard and ask if you can put a 7.3 trans behind a 6.7, the part numbers will not line up. If you call Suncoast or Randy's or whatever, they don't build, or they are not the same transmissions. I don't think Randy's even offers the gas version of the 10R140 quote. So If Ford is adopting now that all of that architecture are 10 or 140s, fine. Some of the literature has indicated that they're using it somewhat interchangeably. What I've seen is 10-speed G defined for gas, for the gas version of the 10-speed for the Super Duty trucks. They are not the same transmissions for the diesel versus the gas application, and they don't need to be. What you need to know as a consumer is that the right amount of transmission strength is offered for the 7.3 liter and for the diesel, and there are two separate applications. They have two separate transmissions. They are not the same. So if you want to interchangeably call them the 10 or 140, fine. Seems like Ford's kind of abandoned calling them unique transmission names, except for they're now calling the one that's backing the 6.8, the 10R100, which appears to have the same number of friction steels and planetary sets as the one that's behind the 7.3. So you guys let me know what you guys want to call it. I just want to let you know that what you need to know as a consumer is that they're not the same. It does not have the 10-speed, or excuse me, the 7.3 does not have the diesel transmission. It is using the similar case. It's a similar architecture. It's not as strong. It's not the same. So per Ford's historical past, we'd call it a 10R100. That's just what we'd call it. But whatever they want to call it now is what they want to call it, and whatever you guys want to call it is fine by me. Take care, everyone. I hope that you enjoyed the video, and I hope that my explanation of the ownership experience and what the 10-speed is makes sense to you guys. Take care all, and let me know how I did.